All right, so let's jump into this. Hathway Cable and Datacom Q3 FY25 performance.
Sounds good.
We've got their press release, their financial statements right here,
Mm.
ready to be,
Yeah.
really dig in. And the goal is to quickly give you a sense of how they did the highs, the lows,
Right.
and everything in between.
Yeah, always interesting, I think, to look at the Indian telecom market,
Yeah.
especially a company like Hathway,
Oh,
trying to straddle that cable TV and
yeah.
broadband world.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's start with the big picture.
Okay.
Revenue is up year over year.
Mm-hmm.
They hit 511.1 5 crore rupees this quarter
Okay.
compared to 504.58 in Q3 last year.
Okay.
Net profit came in at 13.54 crore.
Solid, but not
Yeah,
earth-shattering.
not earth-shattering, right.
Yeah. More interesting, I think, is the breakdown of that revenue.
Okay.
Broadband brought in 149.99 crore. Cable television, a hefty 345.79.
Wow.
So that tells us cable is still king,
Interesting.
even as they're trying to make headway in broadband.
It really does make you wonder about their strategy long-term, right?
Yeah.
They're pushing broadband, but it seems like they're still
Yeah.
very much a cable TV company.
It's highlighting the unique dynamics, I think, of the Indian market.
Yeah,
Unlike many Western countries, cable's on the decline.
right.
But in India, it still holds a strong position.
Yeah.
Hathway might be milking that cash cow while building up their broadband infrastructure
Makes sense.
to prepare for the inevitable shift.
Okay, so it's like they're building the ship while they're sailing it.
Right.
Let's move on to profitability.
Okay.
Net profit was up,
Yeah.
but there's this section in the financial statements called exceptional items
Mm-hmm.
that caught my eye.
Sure.
Can you
Yeah.
unpack that a little for us?
So exceptional items are essentially one-time costs or gains that fall outside normal operations.
Okay.
In Hathway's case, it looks like these primarily relate to impairment of investments.
Okay,
They had to write down the value of some assets,
I see.
which dented their profitability.
So not necessarily a red flag in terms of their
Mhm.
ongoing business,
No.
but definitely something worth noting.
Yeah.
In these financial statements we have, don't break down those exceptional items in detail.
Yeah.
Do we know like what specific expenses or income?
Not from these documents.
Okay.
To get that granular, we'd need to dig into like their explanatory notes.
I got it.
Or maybe even their earnings call transcript.
Transparency is key.
Absolutely.
Here's something else that's quite curious.
Yeah.
No mention of subscriber numbers or ARPU in this press release.
Interesting.
Seems like a pretty big omission, don't you think?
It's unusual, particular for a telecom company.
Right.
They usually love to tout those numbers if they're good.
Right.
This lack of data could suggest that they're experiencing slower growth in that broadband segment,
Right.
which wouldn't be ideal.
Or their ARPU is down, indicating some pressure
It could be.
on pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a head scratcher.
Okay.
Let's shift gears to something a bit more positive.
Sure.
Hathway's been busy on the acquisition front.
Uh-huh.
They acquired the remaining stakes in Hathway Cable MCN Banded Private Limited,
Okay.
Elite Cable Network Private Limited,
Mm-hmm.
and Channels India Network Private Limited.
Wow.
What is the strategic thinking behind this move?
It seems like they're aiming for consolidation
Okay.
and vertical integration
Makes sense.
by bringing these fully under their control.
Yeah.
Hathway gains tighter control over their cable TV network,
Right.
streamlines operations,
Okay.
and potentially reduces costs.
Okay.
Kind of a classic move to strengthen their core business.
So solidifying their base
Mm.
while they figure out the broadband game. But they also have this rather large
Right.
regulatory hurdle to overcome.
Big one.
Right.
Yeah, the Department of Telecommunications, or DOT,
Yeah.
has issued show cause notices to Hathway,
Right.
demanding a significant sum in license fees.
3,201.93 crore rupees.
That's not something you can just brush aside.
Definitely a big deal.
Huge.
Hathway is contesting these demands,
Right.
but this legal battle could drag on and have a real impact on their finances, couldn't it?
Legal battles like this can be unpredictable and
Yeah.
costly.
Right.
Creates uncertainty for investors.
Absolutely.
Ideally, they'd reach some sort of negotiated settlement with the DOT,
Right.
maybe a reduced amount or a payment plan.
Yeah.
But if they lose,
Yeah.
it could put a serious dent in their ability to invest for growth.
So a bit of a cliffhanger ending to part one of our Hathway deep dive. We've got revenue up, but driven by that legacy cable business, a silent subscriber story, and a major regulatory challenge looming.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So we just covered a lot of ground, but you know what they say. The devil is in the details. You mentioned earlier that Hathway's position is kind of interesting given the state of the Indian telecommunications market. Can you expand on that for us a little?
Absolutely. I think it's crucial to understand that cable TV still holds a significant chunk of the entertainment market in India. Unlike other parts of the world where cable is almost obsolete thanks to streaming services, fiber optic broadband.
So Hathway is benefiting from that for now. But wouldn't that also mean that they're facing pressure from all sides?
Exactly.
They've got these newer, more agile broadband providers nipping at their heels on one end and streaming giants vying for viewers on the other.
Precisely. They're in a tight spot trying to defend their cable territory while simultaneously building out their broadband infrastructure to compete with the likes of GeoFiber and Airtel Xstream. And let's not forget the streaming platforms like Netflix and Disney, plus Hotstar, who are also going after those same entertainment rupees.
It sounds like Hathway needs to be firing on all cylinders just to stay in the game.
Yeah, no complacency.
Let alone get ahead, right?
Not at all. That's why I find their recent acquisition spree so interesting. Consolidating their cable network. They're creating a more cost-effective and efficient platform. Could give them an advantage, but they can't stop there. They need to innovate, invest in technology upgrades, maybe even think about strategic partnerships.
Partnerships, you say?
Now
that's an intriguing idea. What if they teamed up with a major streaming provider? They could offer bundled packages, exclusive content, the whole 9 yards. That could be a real game changer, couldn't it?
I think you're onto something there. It's about recognizing those lines are getting blurry. You know, between traditional cable broadband streaming and consumers are looking for convenience and value.
Absolutely.
Hathway could position themselves as a one-stop shop.
I like it.
For all things entertainment and connectivity.
The convergence of all the things. But let's not forget that regulatory elephant in the room. Those DOT license fee demands we talked about earlier. And these legal battles can be lengthy, unpredictable.
For sure.
What are some potential scenarios that could play out? How might they impact Hathway's future?
So, best case scenario. Hathway reaches a negotiated settlement with the DOT. Maybe they pay a reduced amount, maybe even spread out over time, takes some of the financial pressure off, allows them to focus on their growth strategy.
So a financial bump in the road, but not a complete derailment. What about the other end of the spectrum? What happens if they lose this legal battle outright?
That's where things could get dicey. Having to pay out over 3,200 crore.
Wow.
Would put a huge strain on their balance sheet. Potentially limit their ability to invest in those upgrades and initiatives we discussed. They might even have to consider selling off assets or restructuring their operations.
That paints a very different picture. It really highlights the high stakes involved here.
Huge stakes.
And of course, there's a whole range of possibilities in between. They win some, lose some appeal. Counter appeal. It could be a long and winding road.
Absolutely. And we can't predict the future. But we can look at the information we have. Consider the potential ramifications.
For sure.
It's all about critical thinking, which I always encourage our listeners to do.
Don't just accept the headlines. Dig deeper. Ask questions. Form your own informed opinions. It all comes back to that idea of transparency. Which brings us back to those missing subscriber numbers. It is strange they wouldn't disclose that information, wouldn't you say?
Yes. The lack of transparency does raise questions. Makes you wonder if there's something they're not telling us.
It's like a financial mystery novel. You got these clues, revenue figures, acquisitions, regulatory challenges. But a key piece of the puzzle is missing. It's almost as if we need to put on our detective hats and try to figure out why they're being so tight-lipped about those subscriber numbers.
I like that analogy. So, Detective, what are some possible theories for why Hathway's keeping this information under wraps.
Well, we've already discussed a few possibilities.
Sure.
Sluggish broadband growth, declining ARPU.
Right.
Maybe even customer churn in their cable business.
It's possible.
Those are the less optimistic interpretations, of course. Yeah. But is there a chance they're holding back for a strategic reason?
That's always possible.
Okay.
Maybe they're planning a big announcement,
right.
marketing blitz tied to subscriber milestones. Yeah. Or perhaps they're in the middle of negotiating a major partnership. Don't want to tip their hand.
Intrigue, a bit of cloak and dagger.
Right.
In the world of Indian telecom.
Yeah. I guess that's the nature of the game, though.
It is.
Companies play their cards close to the vest, and it's our job to read between the lines.
It's a constant process of analysis, interpretation, reassessment, and that's what makes these deep dives so interesting.
I agree.
We're not just spitting out facts and figures.
Right.
We're trying to understand the nuances of Hathway's performance, strategy, and future prospects.
And who knows, maybe by the time we wrap up this deep dive, those missing subscriber numbers will magically appear.
Maybe.
Solving the mystery and giving us even more to ponder.
Wouldn't that be a twist?
But even if those numbers remain a secret, we've gained valuable insights into Hathway's current state and the challenges and opportunities they face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that Hathway isn't operating in a bubble.
Right.
The broader economic and regulatory landscape in India plays a huge role.
Oh, for sure.
That's a whole other layer to this story, isn't it?
It certainly is. Factors like inflation, interest rates,
yeah,
government policies, competition from international players,
right,
all have a ripple effect on the telecommunications sector.
Okay, I think we need to take a breath here and let our listener absorb all of this.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground.
A lot.
But there's still so much to unpack, especially when it comes to those broader economic and regulatory forces.
Absolutely.
We'll be back soon to explore those in more detail and tie everything together.
Sounds good.
With some key takeaways.
All right.
Welcome back to the show. I'm ready to unpack this next layer of the Hathway story.
Okay.
That economic and regulatory landscape that they're operating in. Right.
I know it can sound a bit dry, but trust me, this stuff is crucial to understanding their chances of success.
And absolutely. You can't separate a company's performance from the broader context in which it operates.
Exactly.
And the Indian telecommunications sector is especially fascinating right now.
Yeah.
A ton of moving parts.
Okay, so give us the lay of the land. What are the major economic trends shaping the industry these days?
Well, you can't ignore India's booming digital economy.
Okay.
Smartphone use is exploding data consumption through the roof.
Yeah.
Growing middle class, hungry for digital services.
Wow.
This is huge for telecom companies.
Yeah.
It fuels demand for both mobile data and broadband.
So like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation.
Exactly.
But I imagine there are also some challenges on the economic front.
Sure.
What are the headwinds that they're facing?
Inflation's a big one.
Yeah.
India's feeling it just like the rest of the world.
Right.
When the cost of equipment, infrastructure, labor goes up.
It can really squeeze profit margins.
Right.
Make it harder for companies to invest in growth.
Yeah, it's like trying to run a marathon with a weight vest on.
Right.
Takes a lot more effort to get to the finish line.
Right.
And then there's the regulatory side of things. We already talked about those license fee demands from the DOT, but is there anything else brewing on that front that could impact Hathway?
So India's regulatory environment for telecom is constantly evolving, which can create both opportunities and headaches.
Right.
The government is pushing for 5G rollout, which requires significant investments from operators.
Yeah.
And then you have the ongoing discussions around spectrum auctions and licensing regulations, which can really reshape the competitive landscape.
Sounds like they need to be pretty nimble to keep up with all those changes.
Yeah.
How do you think Hathway is positioned to navigate this regulatory maze?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
They've been pretty vocal about their concerns regarding those DOT license fee demands. Right.
Arguing that they're unfair.
Yeah.
Stifle growth in the industry.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that legal battle plays out.
Right.
What implications it has for future regulatory decisions.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that unfolds. But speaking of things we're waiting to see, I can't let us wrap up without circling back to,
of course,
those missing subscriber numbers one last time.
Right.
Any parting thoughts on this mystery?
Transparency is so crucial, especially in business.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit concerning when companies withhold key performance indicators.
Right.
like subscriber numbers, it can fuel speculation, erode trust among investors.
I agree. It'd be great to see Hathway address this in their next communication with shareholders.
Yeah.
Just give us some insight into those subscriber trends, their ARPU, their strategy for attracting and retaining customers in this increasingly competitive market.
It's all about building confidence.
Yeah.
Open communication is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Well said. So there you have it, folks. Our deep dive into Hathway Cable and Datacom. We looked at their financials, their strategy, their acquisitions.
Right.
Those looming regulatory challenges, and even trying to crack the case.
We did.
Of the missing subscriber numbers.
Yeah.
A complex story, but hopefully you've come away with a better understanding of this company.
Yeah.
And what the future might hold for them.
And remember, this deep dive is just a starting point.
Right.
With this knowledge in hand.
Yeah.
You can continue exploring on your own.
Absolutely.
Follow Hathway's journey and form your own conclusions about their prospects.
Exactly. Stay curious, stay informed, and as always, thanks for joining us for the deep dive.